So, in this session, we're going to be giving you the tips on how to clean up and consolidate your universes, how to bulk repoint your WebIs from UNV to UNX, and finally, how to bulk update universe descriptions. So, first things first, Yasmina, what can you tell us about a universe's key concepts as they relate to projects, data foundation, and the business layer?
Right, yes, thank you, Scott. So I don't want to spend a great deal of time on going through information design tool because I suspect that a lot of you have already been exposed to it, have used it. I'm not myself an expert in IDT. I've used it in the past for some consultancy work, and I'm sure that some of you are actually more versed in it than I am. But there are some things that I just want to cover because they are distinctive values to using IDT over UDT. And there have been a few changes as well between the two for those of you who are aware and have been using the two solutions. So essentially the new paradigm of the information design tool is that you have projects and these are like a workspace. So there are canvas in which you have your connections, including the connection shortcuts. You have data foundation, and then you have a business layer. And you also have the ability of retrieving multiple times a universe that you want to work on within the canvas. So this is quite handy. And projects are shared themselves. So again, it's great for collaborative work. UDT was a bit lackluster on that front. It was a matter of having a universe and then chopping and changing and sharing it with other colleagues who needed to work on the development, and it wasn't as easy and as streamlined in terms of the collaborative nature of working on it. So that shared project makes it very easy to synchronize changes for the universes, and again, it helps you work seamlessly with your colleagues. So in terms of the data foundation, there's a laundry list of benefits and of features. And again, I'm not here to bore you to death with those. But for me, the key aspects of it are the fact that you can use multi-source connections. You can create those multi-source universes. So in the past, if you had HANA and Oracle and maybe an Excel spreadsheet, and you needed to create those connections in order to draw the tables that you needed to create a universe, well, it was extremely difficult, mission impossible. With the information design tool, you can do that because it allows you to establish those connections, relational and OLAP as well, to a variety of data sources, which is very handy. And following on to that, there's one thing that I quite enjoy is the families concept, because it allows you to color code families of tables. So again, if you've got a multi-source universe, you can color code your HANAs in one color, your Oracles in another, your BW in a third color. So very handy in terms of knowing what you're looking at within the space and navigation of the space. The creation of multiple views of data structure, that's pretty handy as well in the data foundation. Because all in all, that data foundation allows you to have those reusable components when you come to create a universe. And the commenting is also good. Again, you're developing with your colleagues, you want to add comments to certain objects, so that can be easily done in the IDT. So for the business layer, the business layer really is what ends up being the universe as we see it, that .unx file. So when that is published, it's a combination of a connection, a data foundation that form this UNX file. And that contains folders and objects. So I added just a little table with some new terminology that has come up and transition from UDT to IDT. So classes, detail objects, hierarchies, self-restricting joints, and that prompt that we were used to and loved a lot back in the UDT days now they all have new terminology in IDT. It doesn't change what the object does. I think it's just SAP who wants to update the lexicon a little bit.
Well, that's great, first of all, because I'm still using some of the old terminology myself. But now that we've covered the basics of what a universe consists of, we would like to go through the process of creating a new universe with you quickly.
Absolutely. So for me, it's 4 steps, 4 main steps. You have a project that you need to create. So I've put little screenshots of how it looks in IDT. Again, a lot of you might be familiar with that, so I'm just preaching to the converted. But you're creating a project. You will create your connection, so it can be a relational connection or it can be an OLAP connection. When that connection is created, it will be, generally speaking, in the repository, or you can create it within the project and then publish it to the repository in order to secure it, so you have a connection shortcut. And then you will create your data foundation. So this is the first layer of the canvas, so to speak, of that workspace, where you're grabbing from those various connections that you have, if we're looking at multi-source, the set of tables that you want to build a universe on. And this is where you're adding your joins, putting all the filters on the tables, using views, putting all those families of tables, color coordinating, and this is where you can go through that same process as in UDT of resolving any loops, adding context, etc., etc. And the last step is on top of that data foundation, that top layer of having that business layer, where from the data foundation, you're adding your folders of objects, so the entire hierarchy of what you're going to have, your classes, your dimensions, your measures, your details. This is where you can actually run some queries as well as you go through the development to make sure that everything is running fine or that a query makes sense. And the last piece, when everything is done and you're happy with it, then you can publish it to the repository.
So a few years ago, SAP introduced UNX Universes for very good reasons, because they allow for multiple business layers, multiple data foundations, and multiple source capabilities and connections. Now Yasmina will demonstrate how to convert UNV to UNX utilizing the information design tool.
Absolutely, thank you, Scott. So just to clarify things, because we've had a few conversations with users, which is always great to get their insights. But the only known way today, or at least as far as I know, as far as we know, to perform that conversion from a UNV to a UNX is by using the information design tool. So it allows taking an existing UDT, UNV, universe format and to convert it to IDT UNX format. So like I explained before, it will save that into the data foundation and the business layer, as well as a connection shortcut, so that stays. That connection anyway always lives in the repository, or it's been secure, so there are no changes there. So it then changes into a local project and then can easily be published to the repository. Obviously, this process, if you want to verify that things are done properly, you will need to have to do some regression testing to ensure that the universe prompt filters are working properly. So this is typically done by generating some sample reports, and that those reports that are built on top of those newly converted universes are yielding the correct data. So now onto my machine. So this is the demo part. So this is my Sakila universe that I created. It's rather straightforward. It's based on a MySQL database, and this is the steps on how I would go about doing that conversion in the IDT. So first thing to do is to create a project. So new project, and this is where you'll give that project a name. So if you look at the project location, this will be stored locally on the machine. So this is a workspace. Obviously, you can change this as you see fit, but I'm just keeping the default to make it nice and simple. So this is my Sakila project. Okay. So now I have the project created, and I'm connected already to my repository. And this is my list of universes. And here I have that Sakila UNV universe. So I right click on it, and I have the option to do a convert.unv universe. So this is the screen that I'm then presented with. So the file name, where it is currently located in the repository. I have the ability to either keep the same destination folder, or I can change the destination folder. Should I choose to do that, then I have to browse on the repository where I want this new location to be. I then have a few options to automatically convert those @prompt expressions. So those are the legacy from UDT. And if I have derived universes, I can include core universes, and I can override existing files. So this is, if you already have a version in the repository. So as simple as that, I'm just going to click on convert. And this is doing the conversion for me live. So now it's telling me that's the file name, so that hasn't changed. The location, I've decided to keep it in the same folder. So I will have a UNV file and a UNX file. And this is telling me that the conversion is done. So now I can close. So here it is. I'll just refresh the completion. And now this is my old UNV. This is my new UNX. So now it's in the repository. And let's say that I want to do some work on it. I do a right click, retrieve universe. And this is going to ask me, where do I want to save that retrieval in terms of project? So I'm going to select the local project, Sakila Universe. I'm not going to choose to save for users, and I'm definitely not going to be locking universe because I want to have access to it. And now this has created a retrieval folder. And within that folder, I have a business layer, which should open by default because this is essentially what gets published, what you see and you interact with in your reporting solutions when you decide to create a new report. And then I have the secured connection, and I have the data foundation. So this is what my data foundation looks like. So really the conversion of a universe from UNV to UNX in IDT is as straightforward as 1, 2, 3. So if we're talking about, well, I've got a whole bunch of documents that are using those UNV to UNX, and how do I go about organizing, and making a project out of it and having a sequence. It's good to try to automate the workflow as much as possible. So you would have a first phase where you are converting in a dev environment those UNVs to UNX, and then you can do some repointing of those WebI documents from UNV to UNX in bulk, which we will show you in a moment with 360. And then you can also do some regression testing to validate that everything is working fine. My colleague Pauline, before the session, did talk about regression testing. So obviously it was well placed in the sense that now you know a little bit more about regression testing, and you can see how it can nicely tie in your conversion of UNV to UNX. And then obviously, if everything is okay in dev, then you want to be able to promote it to a test environment and then subsequently in production. But again, we like to advocate testing this first before actually making it live. And this is again quite a lot of input and feedback that we've had from a lot of our users over the years.
So with that, we're going to show you how 360 View will do this in bulk, thus speeding up the process, which we'll now demonstrate.
Absolutely. So let me put this in full screen so there's a little bit of real estate. So this is the interface for my 360 suite, and I'm going to connect to my environment. And again, 360 uses the BusinessObjects SDK, so I like to point that out because it means that when you come to connect to the application, you don't need to use a separate credentials. You can just enter your CMS that you want to do some work against, and you can use your BusinessObjects credentials and the authentication that you typically use. So it's got the same kind of look and feel as if you're going into BusinessObjects from the Launchpad or from the CMC. Right. So let the fun begin. I've got a couple of documents that are using my Sakila universe. They're under this folder. So I'm just going to open it so you can see. And I'm also going to bring up my Launchpad so that we can have a look at those documents. So they're under this folder. So I'm going to open this one. And in design mode, if we go into the query panel, we can see that it's pointing to that Sakila UNV universe. So it's perfectly functional. I refresh it. I've got Canada here as a prompt, a little bit biased since I live here. And I've got two tabs, one for the store list, one for the customer list. And this universe, this is just a copy with just a different name, but it's the same thing again. It uses that same Sakila UNV universe. So I'm just going to just save that and exit. So I've got my two documents here. So typically for the Repoint, you have a couple of options. So you can go to the folder that contains the document that you want to repoint. If you have a nesting of subfolders under that root folder, you can do a right click of the mouse and invoke the contextual menu, and then you'll be able to perform a selection of all of the subfolders and the content that you want. In this case, I only have one folder, as you see when I click on it. So for the repoint, there are two ways. So there's an all or nothing approach, which is depicted by the Repoint WebI universe. And in this particular option, you are asked to do a couple of things. One is, as we've seen in my two documents, is that I have some prompt values. As part of the Repoint, you will need to provide prompt values, especially if you have mandatory prompts, because the document will be refreshed as part of the process. So in this case, you do have the possibility of saying, there are some mandatory prompts that I want to provide, so I will feed them within an Excel spreadsheet, and you are given a template. Or alternatively, as if you attended the previous session with my colleague Pauline, there's that possibility of retrieving the WebI prompt that you can then manage. The second thing, and that's obviously only if you have mandatory prompts that you want to fill in. The second part of the option, that's the core, is the provision of the UNV ID. So this is technically the RESTful ID, not the CUID of the universe. So that will be the UNV one, and then the new data provider will be the UNX one. And then you do have a few options. If you do use custom SQL in some of the WebI documents, then you can exclude those so that they don't get affected by the repoint. And also, if you do have some data providers that do not have a hard-coded link to their data provider, to their universe, so essentially it refers to the universe file by name and not by the CUID, you can actually correct that inconsistency by selecting this option. And for any document where you have that kind of weak link, as we call it internally, it will be, that link will be hardened, so to speak, so you will get the CUID enforced again. And then you have those two options, accepted job object type and data type. You might wonder what this is about, and this actually comes from the IDT itself. So I'm just going to quickly jump back into my IDT, and this is a fail-safe which SAP has created. It can be found under Windows Preferences, and under Information Design Tool, Convert Universe, there's an option here to handle date and date time, date formats. So whenever there's a conversion, instead of arbitrarily saying, well, you've got a date, I'm going to convert it to a date time, or the other way around, here you can actually force the conversion tool to say, if it's a date, I want it to be a date. If it's a date, I want it to be a date time. Don't be arbitrary about it because it's going to be affecting my data. So this is something that we've taken from SAP and we've made available here. Typically, when I've used this with some of my my users, the any type is what we want, so that it completely disregards whether it's date or date type. And this is because we've noticed that even if the date formats are fine, it will yield an error for some reason because there's something going on behind the scenes in the algorithm by SAP that causes an issue. So all that to say that this is the screen to use in order to do a repoint. This is the Big Bang approach. The option that I like to use is the detail repoint. And let me tell you why. Is because the Big Bang approach is good if you have documents which only have one data provider, or if they have multiple data providers. Well, you do the repoint once for one universe, and then you take the same extract again, and you do it a second time, and then a third time for as many data providers as you like it. That's not really handy. It's not very automated. We like to automate as much as possible and make your life easier. This is why I like the detail repoints, because this allows you to actually extract your WebIs and to get the data providers and to actually massage the data within an Excel spreadsheet. So let me show you how. I've got my selection here of my document that contains my WebIs. In the documentation block, I will grab these public WebIs data providers, and this will generate an Excel spreadsheet for me. So this is running right now as a web action, and it shouldn't take too long. But what this is doing behind the scenes is that it's extracting all of those properties from my two WebI documents, putting them in a nice little Excel spreadsheet so that I can then see what the document is, where it is, the data providers, their IDs, which is something that I'm interested in as well. And I can see whether they're UNVs or UNX as well. So while this is running, one part of the repoint will be to specify which is the old universe ID, which will be part of the extract, and also the new UNX ID. So you can easily find out by going into your resources, into your universes. We're looking at our sakila.unx here. And if I do a right click, go to update, ID here, this is what I need to do the repoint. So I'm just going to copy that. And I do have a backup for this. So let me bring this up on screen. So this is an export that I did earlier, so you can see what it looks like. So those are my two WebI documents. This is where they're located. Those are the data provider names. those are the current universe UNV IDs, and column K is what I want to replace. So I'm only going to be doing one of them. So this is my new UNX ID. And just to keep things nice and tidy, I'm just going to delete those two rows. So I only have those two data providers in this document that are going to be repointed. So I'm going to save this. Then I'm going to go back to my resources, my public folders. I'm going to select Demo Yasmina, this particular folder, go to Administration, Detail Repoint WebI Universe. I'm going to select my file. So it's this one. Select any type and click on Process. So this is churning away. I can check the log. So this is telling me that this is repointed to this provider. So I can just delete this. And now if I go into my business objects, let's refresh that. I'll open this document. So it should be empty, and yes it is, because it's been repointed. I don't have a refresh on open. If I go to the Design tab, I'll click on the data provider, and now I can see that now it's the Sakila.UNX Universe. So just to make sure that everything is fine, I'm just going to run it, and there it is. That's my repointed WebI document in bulk using 360. So what do you think about that, Scott, then?
That is great. So now that we repointed the WebI document, the next tip we would like to showcase here is how to perform an impact analysis of your universes using 360 eyes. This will allow you to better see what universe objects are being used by what documents, not only in WebI, but also your crystal reports and other formats stored within your BusinessObjects platform.
Yes, that's right, Scott. So what we're looking at now is if we go back into the BI Launchpad, we've got our metadata analysis solution, 360 eyes. So for those of you who've attended this morning's session with Patrick, he spent quite a bit of time going through the capabilities of 360 eyes, which is great, especially when combined with the capabilities of essentially business intelligence and metadata analysis on top of data services. But for our purpose, we're just a little bit more modest insofar as that we want to understand that now we've done a conversion of our universes from UNV to UNX. That conversion is done. We can breathe a little bit more easily because that's been a main challenge, a thorn in our side. And let's say that we need to refactor some of those universes. But before we refactor, we need to know what is going to be the consequence of changing one of those objects to on the WebI documents or the crystal documents that utilize those particular objects. So we do have 4 reports here which allow us to perform this analysis. The first 3 are really having to do with anything that has to do with the data itself. The 4th one is more geared towards variables. So this report is the impact analysis on universe objects. So in this case, you would provide in the prompt value which universe you're looking for, so the source. So again, if you want to be broad and say, I just want to look at a specific universe and what uses those universe objects. Alternatively, if you want to really hone in on a specific object that you're going to change, then you provide this particular object here. And then we have that snapshot, which is just this extraction from a specific data set within the business objects. And for those of you who attended Patrick's, snapshots can be multiple on an existing environment, so you can go back in time, or they can be across environments, so you can actually do a comparison. But this gives you a list for this particular snapshot ID of all the documents that utilize this particular object. So it gives you a good idea that, well, if you're going to change it, the impact is going to be quite wide-ranging, because I do have a lot of documents here that utilize this particular object. In fact, I have about 6 pages worth of documents where that is used. However, I can actually see whether those are user folders or whether those are public folders, such as the root folder. So it gives me a good idea, again, of potentially some custom development by our users or some duplicates that have been created from public folder items. We have the impact analysis for the SQL. So we're going into the data source at this point in time. So more of a lineage. So in this case, you are free to use SQL expressions and statements. We're blending in from the report. So we're picking from our file store, we're picking from a universe as well, and then we can specify the SQL. So here I'm interested in this particular column in my database. And if I make a change to it, what is going to be the impact on the universe as well as on the document? So similar to the previous report, this time I get the fact that this comes from the select statement. This is the universe where it is leveraged. I've got the name of the universe, the class, the object name. So we were looking at snapshot ID in the previous report. So this is the SQL for that column. And then we can see what is the document path, the document name, and the type of document. So once again, the scope of analysis can be public folders or user folders. Last but not least, so this can be useful in general. We're kind of going away from the universes, but I like to mention this one because this is specifically useful if you use Crystal as a direct database connection, or if you use freehand SQL or custom SQL for your WebIs. And in this case, it's a pared down version of Report 51, where you select the snapshot, and then you can just provide the SQL expression that you're interested in. So there, we're hitting directly the database. If we change something, what happens? And last but not least, but again, this is more localized for our reports, is, well, I've got a variable, I'm going to be changing it. Here we're looking at a running sum. I want to know where that running sum is. It could be calculation engine change. Running sums tend to be syntax that get affected, as I've seen that in the past. And then that allows you to dig out all of those documents that use that running sum. So not only does it give you the documents, but it gives you the variable name, so you don't need to go fishing into the variables themselves, and it gives you the full value of that running sum. So again, if you attended the previous session with Pauline, where she showed the fact that you can extract all those variables in Excel and update them, this is a fantastic way as well to get that impact analysis in 360 eyes.
So great. Now that we've converted all of our old UNV universes to UNX, the last trick that we would like to highlight today is how to bulk update your universe objects using our tool 360 UNIV.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Scott, because that's another thing that can be a bit painful. Again, you know, you've got a project, you've done the conversion from UNV to UNX, and now you need to do some refactoring of the universes, or you might have a requirement to actually make the descriptions of your objects consistent across the environment. So let's jump in and see what we can do about this. So we've got 360 units, and let me just make sure that this is running. So that I've got a little probe, I've got a little agent that is running for this. So if you do have units, make sure you have that. And in units, it's actually pretty straightforward. This is something that we like. You perform an export to Excel of your UNX universe. You make the changes in the Excel workbook, and then you can re-import those changes in bulk. And that will update those universe objects that you have modified. So I'm just going to grab the file. So Sakila units, save that. Let's pop that open. So this is my unit export. Let me make this a bit bigger. So I've got 4 tabs, one for my classes, one for my dimensions, one for my measures, one for any filters that I may have. So anything that in IDT is something that you can drop down or modify value based on what is available in the list of values, and you can modify here. So we actually do have a little drop down for you to use. And anything in here can be modified. So I can modify the state, access level, the data type. And if I'm really, really good with my SQL, I can actually modify the SQL statement, the where clause. And essentially everything that can be done within IDT can be modified here in bulk. So those true, false, they can be changed as well. So let's say that for the purpose of our exercise here, I've got this universe, which I created not long ago, and I was really lazy. And I didn't put any descriptions. Not very good practice, because when you get into your WebI and you get to the object, you don't have any descriptions for you. So I'm just going to add a few. Again, this is good if you have descriptions to update. One use case would be to generate this export and to maybe hide, the columns so that the users don't interact with them. And then give the user, so give the business the responsibility to provide those descriptions, because they will be according to the business glossary, so they will match for each business unit, and this is what we want. So if you need to be compliant with regulatory needs, this is a good way of doing it. Another one, and I believe that my colleague Patrick mentioned it in a previous session this morning, is you might need to perform some tagging on your universe objects so that you can track the usage of those objects within the WebI documents. So if you have anything that is sensitive content, information that is confidential for your eyes only, you can also use UNIV in order to perform that kind of activity. So let's say that I might have staff here, you might have you've got a username and a password, so those are good candidates. So you might want to tag them and say, this is GDPR. So that was a good example. Actually, that's going to be here. So GDPR, username is going to be GDPR as well. So just a few things that have been changed. And one last thing that I might want to change is on the staff list, the SID, so I can hide it. I'm going to save this spreadsheet. And I'm going to go into my unit. I'm going to click on import. And I'm going to grab this particular spreadsheet. Okay, so a few things to be mindful of. We do have a delete mode that is available, and this is a fail-safe that we've added to the product because it might be a situation where by mistake you delete something. So it could be one of these objects or a row or a column, and you bring that back into BusinessObjects, and that might cause problems, and we don't want that. So any kind of deletion, we want it to be intentional. So only if you're 100% sure that you don't want to mass delete things from a universe, will you use that. There is also a possibility of selectively for a universe deleting user objects. Again, if it's something that you're interested in, just let us know, and then we can talk more about it. But I'm going to stick to this workflow, and I'm going to click on import. So you do get a nice warning message. It says, are you sure, very, very, very sure that you want to do this? And if you are, please make sure that you have a backup of this universe. And this is because today we don't have intelligence that will validate every single entry in the spreadsheet against the universe that you are updated. So that's why the delete mode. If you delete something, it's just going to wipe it off. It's not going to say, oh, you know, be careful, this might be deleting something important, and then you're going to get, you know, corruption of your file. So please do be careful with that. But again, I still really like this product because it allows, one, to empower the business users to do their bit, you know, with having consistent lexicon glossary used, and two, you can do a lot of tagging and data cataloging. So now we just want to see what is the deal with that. So I have my old Sakila. I'm going to have to do a second retrieval. So I'm retrieving my universe, still in Sakila. So this is the new universe. And then let's see. So before I didn't have any descriptions. Now I do. I have some here. Stop date, staff list, the SID, it is indeed hidden now. And what did we have? We had these GDPR that have been added to the description of those objects. So this is in a nutshell how you would go about doing this extra bit of refactoring for your universes and how you would go about tagging if you need to, or updating descriptions. Over to you, Scott.
Hey, thank you, Yasmina. So I know if you've been in some of our earlier sessions, you've seen the what's the value, what's in it for me slide. And first things first, what I want to make sure some of the takeaways you get from today is that the three tools that we've highlighted in this discussion has been our 360 view, our security, and more importantly, our administration tool that allows you to do things both in automation, but in this case in bulk. So you can do a lot of those tasks that you have to do in, like repointing WebI documents that you have to do in BusinessObjects, you have to do them one at a time. Well, with 360 view, you can do that in bulk and save a lot of time. And that's where we really help out all levels of your BI pyramid, of your administrator, the manager, when it comes to the overall expenditures, and again, facilitating automation to the business side of it. But the big piece here is and the two other tools that we highlighted, which are 360 eyes. That was in this case, it's our metadata management and impact analysis. Here again, it's what universes have been changed and how deep it goes, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, 360 unit, the ability to really get to bulk update descriptions, tag objects containing sensitive content, change your SQL across your universes in a bulk capability tool. And what this will do for you, of course, is increase the power of your overall BusinessObjects platform and optimize your current resources so you can get more for what you're already paid for. So with that, I know that we're running close to time here. We have one quick last poll, and it's very important to us. So, what is your interest level in this webinar topic? Please select one of the following. Either I'm increasing my knowledge, just email me some more information. I don't have immediate needs, but would just like a demo. I'm planning a project and would like to schedule some time. I'm planning a project. I need 360 suite trial keys now. Well, that now part, I know you've heard this from both Don and Lisa, my sales colleagues here, but it's true. With the current conditions and things like that, our demo and POC trial calendar is very full, but we do have some openings available. I would love to try to get you in on this. So if you're interested in getting trial keys or scheduling a demo, if you would just take a quick moment and put your name in the chat and phone number in the chat box, I will give you a call personally, okay? And I think we should have a little bit of time to answer a couple quick questions.
Yes, absolutely. So let me pull up a few questions. I already started looking at them. So Saket is asking, can a UNX file have two data foundations? That's a good question. I'm not sure about that one. I'm not 100% sure. Typically, I've been using one data foundation for multiple business layers. So can get back to you on that one, if that's okay. Sassy could not hear audio. Hopefully that has been sorted out. Tim is asking, is moving reports in a new UNX universe from the old UNV universe, so one report at a time process? No. So hopefully, by the time you ask that question, the demo that I made of the bulk has answered your question. However, if it has not, then please drop us a line, and then we can talk about it on a one-to-one in more detail. But the answer is yes, you do it in bulk, so you don't need to do a one-to-one basis. And then Sassy is asking, what are the benefits of repointing WebI documents using UNV to UNX? Well, essentially, you might not want to have to recreate new UNX universes that match your UNV universes. So what you really want to do is seamlessly say, well, I've got this UNV universe that I want to update, so now it's UNX, and I just want to easily repoint that connection from the old UNV to the new UNX. So essentially, UNX is a new file format because it will be saved anew in the repository. It will have a new CUID. So the fact that you're repointing means that you're leveraging that conversion capability that SAP has provided for the universes moving from UDT to IDT. So hopefully that has answered your question. If there's still a few doubts, again, hit us up, and then we can discuss this on a one-to-one. Thank you very much all for your questions, by the way.
Okay, real quick, here's a couple different resources that you can click onto. Don't forget, this session is recorded and we'll be sending it to you, so you don't need it right now. Last bits, of course, if you, again, if you need a trial or you want more information about us, please reach out. We will definitely get back to you.